Jason Hill is a multi-instrumentalist known for inventing, building, and mastering his own unusual instruments, which help create his unique scores and productions. Hill is also the lead singer, guitarist, and producer for the band Louis XIV. He has produced, written records, and otherwise worked with such artists such as The Killers, David Bowie, Ariel Pink, The White Stripes, and many more. Hill now spends most of his time as a film composer working with the acclaimed director David Fincher. Jason worked on the psychological thriller film Gone Girl and has since worked on many Fincher projects, such as the Emmy Award-winning series MINDHUNTER. This is Jason Hill. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to jump on here. I want to get right into it. And before we kind of talk about the stuff you're doing now, want to kind of rewind a little bit. It's been really fun, too, because I've had a couple of guests on the podcast who are, musicians and have kind of gone through this career and this life, and it's so fun to kind of hear the early beginnings and what sparked this this life that you've lived. And so I want to go back to the early days, whether it's your childhood or school or whatever. I guess the question is, what point in your early life as a kid did you want to get into music?
I knew from the, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily wanted to, like, when the itch really came. I know from a very early on age, I was even I'd written a song at, like, let's see, let me think how old I was, because I was probably like 7-ish or something like that. I don't know, under 10 somewhere, where I remember writing one of my first songs, and it was because my brother was like a big Police fan, and I kind of ripped off the melody to King of Pain and wrote my own words. And so I remember writing my first song, but I didn't play any instruments. My parents had, like, tried to get me to do, like, this Yamaha or Suzuki method or something. Suzuki, I think it was, piano, like learn how to play piano. And apparently my next door neighbor just talked to me during this, like, class or something the whole time. And so, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have taken to it because it was taught to, like, sort of math, although I wasn't really given a chance. So, and there was a piano in the house, but it was out of tune. So so I would go to the piano, but it didn't sound right. So it's like, that's one of the worst things I think you could do, is have an out of tune piano for somebody that's trying to learn how to play music and stuff, because it just doesn't make any sense. So it's hard to, like, put it together. But I didn't, but definitely by the age of 12 or so, I knew. And certainly when I picked up a guitar for the first time, which was probably 13-ish, I knew. I played an E chord. It was like, oh fuck, the world had changed. And it was like, it was, that's my dog, Fia, relax. It's her job to guard from all the neighboring dogs coming into the house and attacking me.
The guard dog. She sounds like she's doing a good job of it.
Yeah. But I definitely knew from the point of, like, once I played an E chord, it was like, oh, this is it. And then everything else went by the wayside. Like, I was a really good tennis player, growing up, because my brother played, and so he was older. So I played at a very young age, and pretty much quit once I picked up a guitar. Like I was so good. Like, I went to Australia and toured and did all these things, like, when I was 12, which was, I guess right before I started really getting into music. This was sort of my last hurrah, was like being a 12-year-old kid with all these, like, 18-year-old kids in Australia and New Zealand on this tennis tour, just sort of, like, left to my own devices, which was amazing, because nowadays nobody would ever let their kid just kind of go for a month to Australia with an 18-year-old chaperone and like a 24-year-old chaperone or something like that. And so we were just, but music really just took to me. Like, I'd hear melodies in my head growing up, like, especially I remember when I was on the tennis court, I would kind of pass the time by hearing these melodies in my head. They were like little symphonies in my head, but I didn't exactly know, or, like, I don't really remember exactly what I knew about them, And then I picked up a guitar and realized, oh yes, this is all music. I mean, I'm sure I knew it was music, but it was like, oh, but then it was very frustrating because I couldn't translate what was in my head to my fingers. You know, like that became a oh fuck moment of like, this is hard. This is frustrating because I hear things but I can't do them. And it was like I always sort of like attributed it to getting out of a like taking a hot shower and the mirror is like foggy when you get out. That's what it's like when you first sort of discover music. At least for me it was. And then little by little that fog lifted and I could see sort of my reflection, and that reflection was music. It was really like the ability to do what I wanted to, what came in my head. And it's still hard at times, you know, to like hear something and figure out what is that, but it becomes easier and easier over time and whatnot. But I knew by the time I was say 12ish or 13, it was nothing else I was going to do. I had no plan B. I was never going to do anything else with my life. There was never a thought about it. It was just, this is what I'm going to do. I remember I was quite a Nazi about to all my friends that had the fortune or misfortune of being in one of my bands growing up. Because the moment I learned an E chord, I started a band. And I pretty much have never been not in a band until that moment. I mean, I've been on a massive hiatus with my band Louis XIV, but it's still technically my band, and I'm still technically in the band, you know. But like,
right.
But it's since 12, I've never not had a band. Actually, there was a time when I remember I was 19 for a month. I wasn't in a band. I remember that
wow.
specific. But like other than that, it was like always a band. And you know, I'd be like, what do you mean you got soccer practice? We have band practice. Fuck that. Quit soccer. This is a band. You're either in the band or you're not a band.
Get your ass here and play some tunes.
Totally. And but I think every band needs that. If you're going to have a successful band, you definitely need a dictator of some sort. True democracy does not work because it just won't. I mean, I know there's certain bands that try to pretend that, like Pearl Jam and this and that, but I don't think that's really the case. I think everybody in that band is just has figured out their role and they do their thing well, you know. But I assume, like in many ways, like Eddie Vedder still steers that ship quite a bit. I don't know, but I think every band needs that sort of person that is going to push no matter what to succeed. And that was sort of me. Because like I said, I just had never any other inkling. I just loved playing music and recording music. It was mostly I loved writing and recording. That was my true thing. For a while, I really enjoyed playing live, but I more enjoy making something from scratch. My only bits of playing live that I would really take to, I mean, I love traveling the world. That was just fantastic. But I just liked making up like my solos every night for some guitar solos. You know, I would sing and play guitar and stuff. In my early bands, I just would sing. I would play guitar, and I'd write songs and stuff. But when every night, I just loved new solos because that's the part where I could really invent and stretch out and change things, and we were jamming and stuff. That's the stuff I dig, like writing. I the idea of like once I write a song, I really could care less about ever playing it again. And that's the thing that separates me from, I think, other people, not in a good or bad way, just a different thing where I don't really care to, like, if I write a song 2-3 days later, I'll forget it, you know, how to play it or the words of it. Like, because I'm a firm believer in the analytical part of the mind will destroy creation if you let it. You know, you have to write with the sort of part of your mind that just reacts and just spits it out. And then the analytical mind, as like a carpenter would, you know, sort of comes in and starts to help craft that thing and make sense of what it is and its potentiality. But if you let the analytical mind react to before the other one, you'll fuck it all up. And I just like to create and write, and you know, ever since I was a little kid, my gift was not necessarily that was like born with perfect pitch or had this ability to virtuosity ability or anything like that. I mean, I can play most instruments now. I can at least hack on most of them, here or there. But my gift was the idea, like the ideas. I would always have ideas, even as a little kid. My mom would call me Mr. Idea Man as a little like 3-year-old, because I
I
was
love
just all
that.
like, what about this? What about that? Like I just wanted to make stuff, and I'm
Hey,
still
you're
that way.
curious.
Yeah, I'm curious, very curious. So, and that's what's guided me this whole way through. So,
That's amazing. I mean, there's something also to speak on even just like the art of just jamming, right? Getting into a studio and just not really having this pressure to, record a hit or write this beautiful
yeah,
song. It's more so just getting in there. Like I had a friend who would take me to a friend of his that super talented musician, but he would get like, 8 to 10 of his buddies in a room, and they were
yeah.
all on different instruments and just jam for like 3 hours.
Oh,
Just
I love doing that.
stay up till 2 in the morning, have some beers, just like jam. And there's no pressure.
Oh,
And I always would beg him to let me to, come back just to listen, even though I wasn't a musician
yeah,
myself. I would
sure.
just sit there and just be in awe at how, first of all, how talented all these guys were together, but also just the
Yeah,
rawness of that, right? They're not
yeah,
playing any pre-existing or pre-written songs or anything. They're just, it's like this flow of music, and that's
totally.
that's to me like the true art of it. I've always kind of geared or dabbled into, my ear tends to lean towards more experimental kind of stuff too, that might be, a
Yeah.
little out there. And it's fun just because it's like there's no, obviously you have to appreciate pop music or structure or this and that and different things, but for me it's just like I love that. I love that rawness of music. So
I,
that's great. I
I,
mean,
I love it too. I mean, I love just jamming and creating without having to, you know, like, oh, let's play the song. Here's the song. Like somebody teaching the song. I just like, I don't want to know what I don't want to know what the song is. Let's just see where this thing can go as this symbiotic sort of thing. You
mhm.
know, yeah. I mean, I have parties like that all the time where um, friends will come in and just we'll set up. Yeah, my studio will do it. We've done it a
You better
number of
text me
times.
when you do that, Jason.
Yeah, I will. I will. I haven't done one for a while, but I've been planning on actually doing it. And I will let you know because it's a blast. You get just all these musicians, great musicians around, and then everything's set up so people just come and go and jump in and on stuff. And it really works when you get the right people around too, because you have to leave your ego at the door a bit. Those don't work when there's somebody that has something too much to prove, and they just they need to like show off. It's like
Right.
once you can get rid of that, and usually if they're good enough musicians, they do have that out. They don't need to go, hey, look at me, check this out. Let me, like then it becomes just this thing moving as a one organism, and it's glorious.
Absolutely.
We had that actually at the studio for I do quite a bit of that because I'm a big one take sort of guy. Like I don't I think it's best once the analytical mind takes over, it will destroy things if you let it. So I'm a huge fan of just record all the time. Press record, don't know what you're going to play, go play it, and then listen back to it and recognize the genius in that phrasing because too often somebody will go, oh, okay, now I figured it out. And then they try to like reform it, and then they reform it in a way that blands it up, that takes out that little nuance that made it kind of cool, that little thing here or there. I mean, not always. There's no, sometimes you perfect something and you get it better and better and better. But quite often, there's an initial thing that is really interesting. And so if you're always recording, it's tremendous. Like the other day before this film called Rice and Sugar, I put together this really great crew of people just to score basically the whole film in one afternoon, and we did. And we
Wow.
weren't watching. We were just watching little clips, and then the editor was going to take that and the director and put that and make the film out of it. But I had this harp player that I'd never played with that was incredible. My friend Jesse on flute and baritone clarinet, and my friend Sam Gundel, who's just a phenomenal musician, on sax, but also MIDI sax, where he actually controls like things like strings and pianos and stuff, but playing it on a MIDI sax. It's out of this world. He's an incredible player. He's played with Blake Mills and Ry Cooder, and I've played with him for about 10 years, ever since this Vicky Cryer record I made.
He's a wizard.
He's a wizard. But it was like, and then myself just jumping around from instrument to instrument, whatever I felt like, you know, and we scored this whole thing, and it was amazing how tight we were, weaving and bobbing. Things would stop, start. Like, there was never a discussion about anything, about keys, about anything. It was just come in and react. And it was glorious. It was so great. And we got, you know, the session was a 3-hour session, and we practically had 3 hours of tunes. It was just, there wasn't a bad thing in the bunch, and it was such a perfect combination. And then, you know, a week or two later, there was another session that we had at the studio that drummer put together, Ryan Miller, and it was a little, those guys, and I was more just sort of like helping to oversee it. Those guys were more trying to sort of like, let me teach you and play and blah, 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 blah. And I kept just trying to push them to, hey, just stop discussing. Just like, don't play. Just let something happen. Yeah. They couldn't quite get it, but there was some really great stuff that came out of it. But there was a little bit more of like, they didn't understand the thing of like, well, just, what do you mean? Let's just play on one chord. Well, the idea is that you're not just playing on like one note or one chord. You let it stretch out, you know, like, there was something that I remember when I first started scoring films. I had done the teaser. David Fincher asked me to do Gone Girl, to do the trailer, the theatrical trailer for Gone Girl, which was doing this like Charles Aznavour song with a big orchestra and a choir, and the singer second at first to sing this and that. And so after we did that, you know, he hired me to do this show, Video Secrecy. I don't know if actually it was on Video Secrecy or if it was on Mindhunter, which I did right after with Fincher. But there was something in the early days, I remember him telling me, I think it was Mindhunter, that he said, hold another, this is only real advice. And it was great advice. I mean, he's given me other bits of things, but it was, hold on to a note as long as you can until you can't hold it anymore. You know, drop the mic.
Mic drop.
Yeah, and it was like, and then, you know, so like even at some of those parties that I would have where I'd get all these great musicians around, that would be a prompt I would tell people, you know, like, everybody in the room, there's 16 people on all these different instruments in this room, everybody hold a note, you know, as long as you can. And it's remarkable how quick musicians, if they're not totally getting there yet, have to change.
Yeah,
they can't. That's the most difficult thing. It's almost like, you know, meditation and breathing. Like when you try to focus on your breathing, it can be exhausting mentally, which is strange because we constantly just breathe. But when you actually concentrate on your breathing, it almost feels difficult. You know, it's almost like more mentally hard for some weird reason. But like, it's the sort of same thing. It's like we're all these musicians, they want to nervously switch. They can't just hang and then let it switch and grow and expand. And whoa, now one thing, everybody's hanging on this note, and then suddenly one guy shifts and it becomes, now we've made a little chord. Whoa, or like, and this thing just, like a river or an ocean, you know, just sort of moves and does all this sort of stuff. That's really what's just truly glorious about playing, when that stuff happens and everybody becomes this big organism. That's the great thing about, once you realize, being in a band and stuff too, that sort of thing that happens when the whole thing just starts to move together and it becomes this one organism, as opposed to 4 or 5 different people just blaring out, just not listening to each other.
Yeah,
That's
and that what you just described too, and everyone kind of being in sync is incredible. I have a friend, two friends, Jacob and Laney. They make music together, and they wrote an album uh, with another super talented group of musicians, and it was a completely different. I don't. How do I explain this? Like they went into it instead of writing songs, they went into it almost like having these sessions where that did happen where they would not just
yeah,
abruptly end. It would kind of slow down and then it would be
yeah,
soft and then it would grow. And I pointed that out. We re-listened to the album a few weeks ago and I pointed that out to him. I'm like, I personally love that. Like
hmm
I love when things kind of flow into the next stage of songs. And even live performing live, there's an artist that I really like, Faye Webster. She played at Outside Lands and her band just you can tell that they just are so nobody has the spotlight on them. Their
yeah.
band is the spotlight, and
That's yeah,
they're going in and out of these tracks that, on Spotify they're only like 2.5 minutes, but on
sure,
stage they're 10 minutes because
totally.
they don't want it to end. And it's kind of like how you described Fincher saying, hold that note. It's like
Yeah.
they don't want that song to end because it's flowing so beautifully. And I think that's the greatness of music. And you describe that flowing or kind of passing the energy ball to different people in the room. And
Yeah.
that's when beautiful things can
Well,
happen.
it's awesome because it's that element of surprise. Like
Right.
that's what really turns me on about all the stuff about creating stuff is walking into a room having maybe a faint idea, but probably not of what's about to happen. And at the end of the evening or the end of the moment, you have something that just was created. Luckily, if you're recording, you can listen back to it and have it sort of be timeless in a way. But that sort of just surprise, like, you know, I've sort of said often, or not often necessarily, but like, you know, going in to do like, there's certain ways that people make records, which is like, they write a song, they've worked it all out, maybe they've even demoed it, and then you're just going to redo that thing.
Right.
It bores the fuck out of me. Like there's
Yep.
no like unless there's a surprise at the end of the thing. I don't want to just go, oh well, here's down, let's do the bass player's part and let's do the drummer's part and let's do the blah 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 blah. All
It's
this
like you're
like
clocked in. It's like you're clocking in and out.
yeah, totally, exactly. And there is a place for that in making records, and some people have made great records like that. Absolutely. But for me, it's like I want to be surprised. Like I just want to be like, oh wow, like I just want because I want the magic, and
That's the word right there, magic. I try to use
yeah,
that word as much as I can because the minute you steer away from that and things become stuffy and just
yeah,
too perfect, that it just loses the
totally.
soul, the magic.
Totally. I mean, because exactly, in that analytical part of the brain can destroy it all. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of that surprise. I mean, I have a
Absolutely.
friend I remember in a massive band, actually. Billions of streams and whatnot. Really good friend of mine that I've worked. I won't mention their names, but like on this thing, but he plays guitar in this particular band, and he was over at my studio, and we were working on something, and he was complaining about how the singer of the band never likes to work on any of the stuff that he's worked out. Like he's really, like he's he's figured out all these guitar parts. Here's the structure of the song, blah 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 blah. He was like basically kind of, which often people do for me as a producer. You take on the hat not only as the sort of leader of the sessions and this and that, but you're also sort of a psychologist, in a way, right? And so, but he was bitching about how the particular singer, every time he would bring songs to him, he never wanted to work on the songs that he'd had all like worked out. He would come to the thing, here's 12 things that I've worked on for the last few months, what do you think of them? And none of them would turn him on. All he wanted to do, the singer, was work on something that was happening right at that moment. In the words of this particular gentleman, my friend said, he just likes the things that are just coming out of my ass at any moment. It's like, and I had to explain to him, it's like, I understand. because
Yeah.
there's a spark of creativity there. Whereas the other one, you've kind of just, beaten a dead horse, as they say, like it's just sort of like you've worked it out. So there's no element of surprise. Like, it's like you want that little magic door to open that you didn't even realize, oh, there was a door there this whole time. Oh my
Right.
God. I thought this was a wall. There's a magic door, like little, like that's what you want. And then everybody is there's that surprise, that magic is happening where everybody doesn't know where we're going to end up. And that's a beautiful thing, like it's much more interesting when you don't know the ending of the movie.
Yeah. You don't want to be like, I know exactly how this is going to end.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
You're like,
Yeah,
why am
because
I
then it's like,
investing my time
why
in
even
this?
do this? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Why do this? I know,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, hey, I want to dabble in or touch on your time with your band Louis the 14th.
yeah.
I actually have kind of a interesting funny story. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of this, but I'm 27. I grew up with an older brother, Ryan. He's 4 years older than me. We both loved baseball, and we also loved, to dabble with playing some sports video games as well.
Sure.
And after I met you, it didn't really click when we were talking, but then I went home and I had a laugh and called my brother because our favorite game still to this day is
Uh-huh.
MVP Baseball 2005.
And did we have some songs in that or
And
something?
you
Or
had Finding Out True Love is Blind on there. And
okay, cool. Yeah.
and so I got a good laugh when I got home because I was like, every time we would load in that game, it didn't randomize the songs. It was that song would play first.
Oh,
And so,
really?
yeah, so,
I
so
wonder
for,
how it applies to baseball. That's interesting. But yeah, it's great.
yeah, so because MVP Baseball, the game is a baseball game EA Sports made. Um, and I just thought it was funny because the reason I'm bringing this up is because I wanted to know if you like, how did that's such an interesting world to me, how these, um, companies pick songs for like who's the middleman in this situation where hey, we got EA Sports, they're making a baseball game, they really like Finding Out True Love is Blind, can we get that on
I
there?
mean,
How does that work? Did you
I
know?
have no idea. I remember. I'm pretty sure EA is it EA or A? It's EA.
EA, yeah, EA Sports.
Yeah, I remember. I don't really play video games, hardly at all. Every once in a while, I get like some sort of console. Like I remember we played Xbox and they gave me like a console. And more recently, I bought one because I'm like, I'm gonna get into playing video games, and I play for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, I don't.
You're like,
Uh,
no, I can't do it.
that's just me, but because I tend to find that I generally like to do things where I make something at the end of it. I see some sort of something transform at the end of it. And my
Right.
brother's a big, big, big video game guy. So I think growing up, I'd always look at him going, "You're wasting your fucking time. Like, what are you doing? Let's make something." Like,
Come on, make some music.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, so, but I understand people really dig it. That's why I always go, maybe I should try this because I know it. Maybe I don't know, it doesn't work out. But I think that particular thing, because I know we were in some of the FIFA stuff and like the soccer stuff, and I don't know if that was like just a fan over there, if that had something to do with I was signed to Atlantic Records before, if they generated that, or if our old manager Michael Jobson might have instigated. I really have no idea. I mean, there was a time when that particular song especially really broke out, and it broke out before we'd ever signed a record deal. Number it was like number one on tons of radio stations in Europe and in the United States without a record deal, which was unheard of, which was crazy. Five on
Incredible.
the West Coast
I mean,
without
it's a
even that
great
record,
record.
without even the record being out. That song was on these radio stations, and it all happened. It all happened from coming out of San Diego, and I believe out of 91X, 94.9 as well played it. But like it just started sort of spreading before we'd even signed a record deal, and so that that song weirdly had all these like several lifespans, because then we signed a record deal, And then like a year later, it actually technically came out. But by that point, it had already been played on all these radio stations for a long ass fucking time. So
Right.
it just in some ways hindered it from, because a lot of people were like, well, we played this like all like a year ago, like nonstop. Why are we going to play it again? So it in some ways it kind of hindered it, but it also had then all these other radio stations start playing stuff. So, but as far as like actually getting on those things, I have no idea how it happened. Obviously, some fan somewhere at the company, and maybe it had something to do with Sony, who was our publisher at the time on those old tracks. I don't really know. But
Well, you had a very strong gaming community that loved that song, let me tell you. Because
that's
there
great.
was a lot of comments too that, you know, every time and even before I met you, I'd throw on that soundtrack just because it's a great soundtrack. I mean, whoever paired those records together did an incredible job.
Yeah.
It's just an all around great soundtrack. But a lot of people, when that song would come up, whether it's a YouTube comment or they would be like, "Oh yeah, when I think of MVP baseball, I think of this song." So
That's
a lot of
that's
people love it.
awesome. No, I mean that's super awesome. That's super awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
my brother is like a gaming fanatic. He has been since we were little kids. Like so he'll spend at least several hours a day playing games.
There's not enough
Uh,
time in a day. Unfortunately, the older we get, you know, I still find time to game here and there, but it's a time sucker.
it's a time sucker. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so I want to get into so you know we had touched on Louis the 14th stuff like that, and now with your current role now and your part in your career, you're doing a lot of film scores, TV shows. You had mentioned working with David Fincher. I kind of want to touch on that too, and how you transitioned away from being in a band for a majority of your career, and what kind of how did that fall into whether it fell in your lap or you said, hey, I want to go do this? Did you intentionally want to start writing film scores, or like how did that kind of
Well,
for you?
it was slightly random. It was, I would consider more like fate in a strange way, but be it all. I hadn't really ever set out to do it. I know I wanted to do it. Like it was in the back of my mind, but I really had no idea how to do it or anything like that. But I've never let not knowing how to do something stop me from doing that thing. Um, I had found myself sort of like we wanted to take a break from Louis the 14th, and it was like around 2010. I was living in San Diego. I'd just gotten off a massive long tour for like basically like a year and a half of really consistent touring, and just kind of wanted something different. And I know about my life, I've realized that I have to constantly change, otherwise I'll get depressed and stuck in a rut and things like that, unless I'm sort of just changing
Right.
what I'm getting into and this and that. It all sort of ebbs and flows and stuff. So I found myself sort of in relative suburbia in San Diego, single, and off this long ass tour, and kind of disillusioned by some different things in the business end of it, with Atlantic Records and with our management and a business manager that ripped us off. And like, so like these things sort of had kind of taken its toll on me a bit. And I said, I'm just gonna get out of town. I'm gonna move up to LA, and I'm just gonna concentrate on producing records. Because even before Louis the 14th, I'd kind of always thought I would just kind of be a producer, because I am interested in lots of music, different kinds of music, and I don't like to repeat myself all the time. And I thought, and people were always asking me to do that anyway, because ever since I started on like a 4-track when I was young, it was about recording music from day one, and I got really into recording. So and I didn't like being at the mercy of engineers or other producers. That's why I always produced all our stuff, and because I just wanted, I didn't like the idea of this is how you have to do something. It's like, what do you mean this is? And I remember an engineer told me that once, like, this is how you get a vocal. It's like, I don't know any different. I was 15, but I think that's a fucking stupid answer. There's more than one way to do lots of things. And so,
Yeah.
like, anyway, so people would always like in my 20s and stuff would like pay me to record their bands and stuff. So for ones I dug, I did that and I got into it. So anyway, I moved up to LA thinking I would concentrate on producing more. And I started doing that a bit. And then I made this Vicky Cryer record with different friends of mine, like one of the members. It's kind of like a super band, some Killers, some Muse, some Jamiroquai, some guys that play with Julian Casablancas, like, and it's basically my solo record, but with these sort of like super groupish sort of things. And I just made that, and I'd done a New York Dolls record in Newcastle, England, which was a lot of fun, and kind of joined the New York Dolls for a summer or a winter, I can't remember what it was, but toured Europe and came back, and I had been in a relationship with a girl that was kind of we weren't a perfect fit. I loved her, but it was like we were having problems. And I remember it was like Valentine's Day was a Friday, and we broke up on that Friday. And Saturday, my father was passing away as well too. He was in a bad place, and so I was drinking too much. And Saturday, I decided maybe I'm drinking way too much, and I went to like AA for the first time. And I drink, and I still drink a little bit, but anyway, for like a month, I went to AA and kind of realized, no, I'm all right. But anyway, so Saturday kicked in.
It's good that you checked in with yourself, though. It's good. That
you know, at the end, when you, I was, you know, when you break up in a relationship too, like often you sort of like kind of take a deep breath and you kind of come to like where am I at life right now? And, you know, maybe I'm not perfect. Like maybe I can, maybe there is some shit that I'm not paying attention to. So anyway, that Saturday I went to AA, and then Monday I got a call from Fincher's wife to work on Gone Girl. And the thing is, it was to do this song She by Charles Aznavour, like I said, but it was like this song kind of about like codependency and the dark side of this relationship. It's seen as a big love song, and it was made famous in Notting Hill by Elvis Costello, but it was a big French song from the 70s. But Fincher saw the darkness in it, just like in Every Breath You Take, there's like kind of a stalker mentality to it, but everybody looks at it as like this love song.
Right.
It was the same sort of thing. And so being asked to do this song, like on that Monday, literally like 3 days from the breakup, whatever, it was like, oh, and I decided I'd be sober for a year, which I ended up doing and stuff. So I was slightly miserably sober and miserably in this like breakup, but I was able to channel it all into this song that was kind of about my life at that moment. So it was like kind of a perfect situation where I could put everything I had into this production, which it sort of was a great use of my skills and everything I've worked for to this moment, because there was strings, there's a choir, all in my rock and roll space and stuff. I would use strings a lot because I was a big Bowie and you know, T-Rex fan, and all the old rad records, you know, even Zeppelin and the Stones and stuff have these great string bits, Elton John, all this stuff. That's the kind of shit I love. And so I would do all that in our music and stuff. And so in this particular opportunity, it was like I could throw it all in there and do this really killer thing. And we did, and me and Fincher just hit it off. I think he recognized my work ethic was really crazy, which it is, because it's not exactly work to me, and I'm kind of obsessive about it all. And he recognized that we sort of share a similar bit of perfectionist aspect. I'm not a perfectionist in that, like, it's about like, oh, it's got to be perfect, this and that, in the same way that Fincher is. I'm like, I want this to be magic, exciting, interesting. And often the perfect thing is the thing that is weirder,
imperfect,
or off, is imperfect. When things are too perfect, they suck all the life out. And so I'm constantly trying to hold on to what makes it actually exciting. And then from there, it was I actually did stretch out to him. He might have been going to ask me anyway, but I did say to him, because I knew like Steven Soderbergh was like one of his best friends and stuff, and I said, Soderbergh. But I said, do you or any of your friends have any like HBO, or Netflix shows that you happen to be scored? Because I would love to get into composing for film. I'd never done it, and but it was worth a shot. And he said, actually, let me call you back tomorrow. And he called me back with asking me to do Video Secrecy for HBO, which didn't come out, but we worked on it for 8 months or so. There was 4 episodes that were made, and then they shelved it.
And by the way, none of this would have happened if it wasn't for that curiosity that you wanted to explore this kind of uncharted territory. And that's, a lesson for life too, where, nothing's ever going to come out of anything if you don't ask or have that level of curiosity. No, so
exactly. Yeah. It's very, very true. If you don't go for it, you can't get it. Like, I would always say, like, there's lots of great musicians that are in their bedroom, wondering why they haven't been discovered. You have to do something to
get out of the house, man.
Yeah, totally. You have to do stuff, to get it out there. So, it's a lesson for all of us at all times. But yeah, so we just sort of hit it off, and I didn't know what I was doing in that world. And so I worked really hard, and I just wanted to make it all very unique. And also, I was fortunate enough to work on the first several things I did were all for Fincher. And now we've done like 7 or 8 or something. And we just did a Super Bowl commercial that didn't end up, they pushed it to Summer Olympics, but we just had finished that like a week and a half ago. So that would have been maybe our 8th or 9th project we've done together. But working under him, I realized, wow, he works really hard. So it made it so that, and everybody under that's working with him works really hard because he does, and they want to make it great. And I also had to, I knew there was going to be comparisons between my work and Trent and Atticus's work. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who have done so many films for him. And I knew that, and they're great. They're tremendous. So I knew that I couldn't do anything like them, which was fine with me because we didn't naturally do similar sort of things. Our music's very different. But I knew the easy thing, and what a lot of probably people would do is sort of like go in that sort of direction. But I knew that would just be like fucking Bud Light to Budweiser or whatever, I didn't want to do that.
It's too easy.
Yeah, and it's like it would have been a dumb move, So anytime any directors have tried to sway me towards that direction, which happened in this movie I did about the Fire Festival, where ultimately it was just fucking license some of Trent's work if you want it, and that's what he did, because it was just like, dude, or Trent Atticus is working. I was just like, I'm not going to copy anybody, let alone these guys. But
you're like, great. I'm Jason. I'm Jason.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm Jason.
Nice
to meet you.
Yeah. But so I tried really hard, especially like if some of my favorite stuff I've ever done was for Mindhunter, and especially like the second season where I really got into it. But the first season as well, I think it's very unique and different, and I really was pushing boundaries, and I worked really hard and long and for a very long time. I mean, I worked for 8 months before I ever saw a picture, so I was creating such a library and of music that ended up being sort of the tentacles of everything. Once I saw a picture, I wrote the piece that sort of defined the sound of the show, like immediately. But that 8 months got me to that place. But I learned, it was sort of like a crash course in learning how to work in film and working with one of the best filmmakers of all time. So it was really great. And it really helped inform, it was such a gift. And it really helped inform everything I've done working with other directors and whatnot. And because I can always fall back on, this is how it should be done. Like, this is how it should be done. So when I see other people doing things differently or with other motives too, like on other productions, you see, which you see, and I didn't come from this place where I came from a band, all this sort of stuff where this wasn't work for us. I mean, it was work and it was hard. You know, a lot of times you don't want to go up on fucking stage. You want to sit at the hotel room and like order room service and watch HBO or Netflix.
Right.
You know, the last thing you want to do is get up on stage. You know, everybody. So some nights it is work, of course, but you'd see in some of these other productions where people are making a show, and because there's so many people that make a show, but it's just a job for them. And for me, even still to this day, it's not just a job. If I don't like something or I don't like where the director's going or whatnot, like I've quit off of shows or said like I'm not, why don't I just not do those episodes? I don't get where you're going with it. I don't want to do what you want me to do. I mean, I'm not like a troublemaker in that regard. I'm just a realist, and I just want to only do shit I'm proud of, you know.
Yeah, you don't want to sacrifice your sound or your vision just for the sake of pleasing somebody else, you know?
Sure. I mean, I don't. I maybe do have a bit of the sound or something like this or that, but like I do always try to change. Like I never try to repeat myself,
Right.
or try to copy somebody else. I mean, look, I'll vibe somebody else if it's like 50 or 60 years old. Like you want to vibe some fucking old Italian or French, you know, scores from the 70s or the 60s. Yes, I'm down. Yeah. But I'm not gonna vibe something like, you know, where this is literally something I've been sent like stuff of like, well, we're really going for this Euphoria type vibe. And no offense of Euphoria, I've never seen the show, but it's like, wasn't that like last year? Well, fuck off. I don't want anything to do. Like, no, I probably won't dig it, and B, I mean, I might. I don't know. Never heard it.
Well, but that just goes into a whole deal of how so many people, instead of trying to tap into this vast era of incredible, just unique music, you know, 50, 60, 70 years ago, versus being like, hey, let's just try to emulate what's hot right now, what's in. Right. And I know a lot of executives too that don't really have that musical side, or people that are a little bit out of touch in that sense. They want the easy route. They want the shortcut. They're like, just give me what's in right now, and let's turn it up that volume a little bit. But then, you know, from your perspective, I'm assuming it's just like, but that person that created Euphoria wasn't probably trying to copy something that came out the year before that. You know, when you create greatness, it's, you know, for example, I love it when people sample like super old. It's funny you mentioned old Italian music, but just like any European old, you know, there's like the song called Bonnie and Clyde that I love.
Oh yeah, by Serge Gainsbourg. Yeah, I'm a huge Serge Gainsbourg fan.
I will literally.
Matter of fact, I'm going to show you. Hold on, I'm going to just show you something really quick.
Oh, I love this. I love this.
Oddly enough, I was literally just listening to that particular record.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I love this.
Bonnie and Clyde on that. No, actually, Bonnie and Clyde's on different. This is what I was listening to last night, Serge Gainsbourg.
Oh,
this is
amazing.
A painting I did of Serge Gainsbourg.
Wow. You painted this?
Yeah, I painted that.
That's incredible.
Years ago. But yeah, actually, no, Bonnie and Clyde's on the record right before Melody, but this is his best record. Anyway.
That's incredible.
Yeah, Serge Gainsbourg. I'm a massive fan. Massive fan.
I think it's you know, it's just beautiful. It's literally beautiful, and I could sit there and listen to that on repeat for hours and hours and hours and hours. Yeah. And
just sample. Somebody sampled it?
Yeah, so Jay Electronica. He's a rapper. He's in his 40s now, but he's always kind of I just appreciated his music because he sampled a lot of those older tracks.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And he just unlocks that magic, and he looks back at that era of music and sees there's also a guy.
Yeah.
There's a other guy from the UK. I should just compile my list of these and send them to you after this, just so you can check them out. But I'm obsessed with that kind of era of music, and it's just so more real and raw, and everything obviously now, not to sound like a pessimist, but like everything now is obviously motivated by money, and everything's just like, let's create this or let's do that. But back then it was like before the internet, before it was just beautiful. That's all I can say.
Sure. Well, there was some great, great musicians and stuff back in the day, and people influenced by different things and doing different stuff. I mean, we're as years go on, we get influenced by stuff that happened right before and this and that. And there was some really eclectic things happening that people were vibing off. I mean, but going back to your sort of idea about trendiness and stuff, that's a battle I've always fought in terms of people trying to, whether it's artists, young artists or something that are coming up where they're just trying to follow trends, or they'll be forced by managers and record companies and stuff to follow trends, and where record companies are always, or, film studios or directors, like there's always people trying to follow trends. And for me, I think that a bit of my success and the reason I have a career is, hey, I don't have a fucking filter, but it's like, and also, and I think some people admire that, but like, because they know they'll get an honest answer from me. But I've always been a contrarian, like I went to the same high school as Blink-182, right? So, and and so of course I fucking hated pop punk growing up. I was like of course, like no, like they're great, I really enjoy it. I like the guys, in the band, but like, but I was going to, anytime everybody went this way, I had to go this way. And it wasn't necessarily like a conscious thing. It was just, this is the way I am. Like I want to do something way more interesting. If everybody's, it's sort of the same way, like when Nirvana came out, for me, I was young, and it was like, well, I liked Nirvana, but then all of a sudden everybody likes Nirvana. So it's like, I got to find something else. Like, this is like, and when you're young, what you like represents you so much, because you don't really have anything else. So you just have what you like, like you don't have stuff. So you just have what you like, and it represents you so much, oddly enough, like the type of music you listen to, but for me, it was finding more eclectic and more things that people didn't know about that they could be mine, like for instance, like Serge Gainsbourg was one of those things forever, ever since I discovered him. And actually I remember specifically, I was in Rennes, France on tour, and went to an old Virgin Mega store, and I was just like walking around the town, and I see this big, like in Virgin Mega store I went in, it was like one of these massive music stores, and there was a whole like corner of the section devoted, like big room practically devoted to this guy Serge Gainsbourg. It was like, who was this guy? And there was a listening station, and I went in, and luckily I heard the Melody Nelson record, which is his best and arguably his only really great record. It's the one, Bonnie and Clyde, I believe, yes, it's on the one right before it. But he really achieved magic on this particular record, and you should listen to it. It's the Ballad of Melody Nelson, and the whole thing is fucking great all the way through. But
I would love to.
But I luckily heard just that record first, and I just instantly bought it, and I just fell in love. And it turns out he's like the Frank Sinatra of France. But around the world, most people didn't know about it. But for me, it was like, oh, this is one of my things. And then it was like, I remember then years later, Beck came out with his Sea Change record, which is very much vibing Serge Gainsbourg, like literally copying licks. And I remember working with David Campbell, who's Beck's dad, who's a really great conductor and arranger for strings and whatnot. And he was conducting. I had him come in and conduct She that I did with Gone Girl, and I had him do a couple of Louis XIV things. And I remember talking to one of them about his work on Sea Change, and because there's some string lines that are straight up directly homaging,
nice,
if not just ripping off completely, even the guitar lines that are that on Sea Change are doing that. And actually Roger Manning Jr. came in for a session just recently. He plays keys with Beck, and we were talking about that particular record as well too, and the Serge
I love that.
But anyway, like T-Rex was that way for me too when I was growing up, or like all these early punk bands that I got into as a teenager from like England, and like Stiff Little Fingers and Mega City 4 and all these really interesting eclectic things. So I was always going that way. Like anytime everybody's in this, I got to go this way. No matter what it was sort of like, that's how you find your own path,
It was always a running joke too with me, because I would discover an artist and then 2 or 3 years later they would pop and people would be like, "Oh, have you heard of this?" And that instantly when I heard that, I'd be like, "I'm out.
Yeah.
I can't
Totally.
do it anymore."
Which is terrible to the artist, but it's just nature. It's in our nature to try to be original thinkers, and and I think that's a good thing, for sure. Like
my favorite band growing up was Animal Collective.
Oh yeah, they're great.
And that was, I was in like the 8th grade listening to them. Like everyone's listening to, you're young, you're a kid, you're supposed to be listening to Katy Perry and
Sure.
all this other stuff. And then I was over here like 8th grade, like, listening to Animal Collective, and people are like, "What the hell are you on?" Like,
sure, yeah.
I love it. My ears love it. My brain loves it.
Yeah.
So,
and it becomes your thing, like I would find that like when I first moved up to LA, I signed a deal with Universal Publishing, who I'm still on. And but I remember like being asked to do like writing sessions for other people, and which was interesting to me. And I still do it. As a matter of fact, I did one. I hadn't done it for years, but I just recently said I'm going to start doing that again because it was kind of fun, because I wanted to take a break from scoring films and get back to sort of eclectically writing. And so like yesterday I wrote with this Israeli guy and this big pop star over there. And then the day before I wrote with this girl, and we wrote these great songs and stuff, but it's a great way to stretch out. Anyway, when I first started, I signed to Universal, they kept asking me to write with these different young girls that were being signed, that were just starting their sort of careers. And it, like, without fail, I would always try to like really, we write something super fucking rad, and then like you would hear what the record company was going to release as their signal and their direction for this person. And it like was like across the board, it would happen over and over again until finally it was like, I can't write with you people anymore, because you're just like, because they would like release
destroying the art.
It'd be like we write something so fucking rad and be like, look, you're 18, like this is like an 18-year-old girl doing this, you'll just set the world on fire with the original thing of it. Like people will so appreciate this. And then they would go and release something that could be a Katy Perry, or that could be this thing, or that could be that sounds like all of the other ones, or whatever usually was hot at that exact moment, whether it's Lady Gaga or this or that or something, like, which these are all great artists in their own regard doing their thing, but like it just been like there was no identity to it. It could have been like, just here's the song, put in any singer, and they'll like there's no identity to it. It doesn't sound like the moment you hear the Rolling Stones, it's the Rolling Stones. The moment you hear like U2, it's U2. The moment you hear this artist or that artist, it's them, Prince, right, or this or that. And so like the originality factor is just diluted because the record companies and the manager and then the artists are always like, they're caught in the middle of it. But without fail, years later, I would always get calls and people just going, you were right. Their career is like, they've been dropped from the label, this or that. And it'll be like, what happened to that song that we did? It's like, you blew it, but I understand. I feel bad because I understand the power that record companies have to younger people, as they did with me. I signed my first record deal in my early 20s, I think, early to mid 20s. And,
which is still young.
Yeah, totally. And you make like some bad decisions because you think that, because you listen to these people and our A&R guy at my first, record deal, to this day, I work with him because he goes over my contracts in film, because he now manages and does like sort of legal work, even though he's not a lawyer for composers. But he has apologized to me over and over again for not having the insight of understanding the kind of artist that I am. Where it's like for instance, we had recorded this killer record on an 8-track, reel to reel, out in the mountains. This was my band Convoys before Louis XIV, and I got disillusioned by that deal so much that I quit the band and started Louis XIV, because even though we were signed to this label, there was all these things so we made this rad record out in the woods where we kind of did what the band did for like Music for Big Pink, whereas we went out an hour outside of San Diego up in the mountains on this. We lived in 2 different places, but they were both like on 46-acre ranch type things where it was just like us out in the middle of nowhere, an hour from downtown San Diego, just learning how to sing and record together. And we recorded this rad record and like wrote and recorded the songs. It was very just real raw record, no auto tune, no fucking all this other stuff.
No bullshit.
No bullshit, on tape, on 8 tracks, each song had 8
Which
tracks.
Sounds incredible.
It sounded great. And we were just learning how to do it. We were learning how to sing and anyway, we made this rad record, and then we signed a record deal from this record. And then, because this is the way that they thought we were supposed to do it, they then asked a producer. And the only time I've ever worked with an outside producer, other than other producers, friends of mine, where we kind of collaborate. But like, so they brought in this guy to come in and like, let's re-record this record. Well, now it's like a few years later. The last thing we want to do is re-record something we did magically in the first time, where it came out of a wonderful, now then you become a cover band of yourself. Right. And so it was excruciating, and it was really painful to do, because we didn't make better versions. As a matter of fact, we made worse versions, I think. And it was just, and we'd already written all these new songs. Like, that's what we wanted to do. We didn't want to like recreate this thing. And I think it was a kind of a disaster in a lot of ways. Like, but to this day, like I said, like his name is Joe, great guy. He apologizes for that. He's like, we didn't know that. We should have just released that record and then had you made a new record, Yeah. But especially back in those days, like that's what they thought you should do it. But that's still kind of that mentality of forcing artists to do something that they shouldn't be doing.
Well, that just completely strips away what it means to be an artist too, right?
Yeah.
When you almost put them through this conveyor belt and manufacture these records versus just being like, in a perfect world, obviously we're talking about the music industry here, and it's the least perfect world, but say, hey, you're extremely talented, keep doing what you're doing, it's incredible, here's some money. We'll give you some resources, we'll give you some marketing, if it pops, whatever, blah, blah, like, and then, it's just, I don't know the legalities of a lot of these deals. Obviously there's a lot of bad press about how shady and slimy the industry is. And I even see it on my end with, shooting documentaries and some videos and stuff that I've done in the past. But it's just so interesting to me that they are so counterproductive in the way that they are, in their minds, trying to get someone to pop to make money, but they're removing the key ingredient that would have made them pop.
Totally. Well,
which is like their authenticity, their originality, and they're saying, no, we're this record label, we have all these great people and things, let's just throw it on you and whatever, so it's interesting how that works.
Well, I mean, I think there's good people at these companies,
right? For sure,
but they don't. But they often have just the wrong idea of how to do. What they'll often do is try to fit an artist into an already like a conveyor belt that's already happening, as opposed to just following that artist and helping clear out the brush in front of them if that's what they need or whatever. Instead of like, they think that they're doing the right thing, but they're often not. But then again, also it's voodoo. Like we'll never recoup probably from Atlantic Records because they just bullshit throw this person, this expense, that thing. It's
oh yeah.
What are we gonna do? Like audit them? It's like it's like insane. It's totally insane.
What do you mean this ride from the airport cost $4,000? Are we?
Yeah, no, exactly. But it's like, and some people, they have a dinner regarding something or whatever, and they just put it on to your bill. Like, like it's just like that. Like, shit happens all the
360
time.
deals.
Yeah, like there's all that sort of stuff. But I mean, but it's also they're oblivious in a lot of ways to it. Like, I mean, here's a great example of some of just the bullshit that they do, but they often will go, well, this worked because they are like banks. They're just like, they're selling toys. They're selling
Yeah.
Christmas fucking toys is what they're doing. And so but they'll just copy one person's artistry and then like try to like funnel that into the other things so they can make some money. I mean, a great example of it is what Atlantic Records did to Louis XIV, which, I mean, I don't know how much of this was the artist and Atlantic or whatever, but like Atlantic Records would have, like, if you go into their building, they have these big, I don't know if it's still this way, but they used to have these big blown up pictures of their bands, like huge, life size, all around, And I remember going, and when we took our promo pictures for the Louis XIV, Best Little Secrets Are Kept, where Find Out True Is Blind is on, we did it down at Valentino. He used to, like, the old actor from the 20s, this guy Valentino. There was like, he had an apartment downtown that to this day, it's like kept the way he had. It's like this decrepit building that I don't know what's going on in the rest of the building, but like for some reason, this velvety red root, like his apartment is still kind of intact the way he had it. It's all like, you couldn't really live there because it's kind of disgusting because it's
an art piece,
but it still has this vibe. And somehow we got into this place to take promo pictures and to do our album covers and shit.
Right.
And I forgot exactly how it came about, but anyway, we took these. So there's these great promo shots and stuff that we did, and there's like one in particular I remember, and walking into the Atlantic building, seeing this picture. I'm like sitting down on this like window sill and the band's around me. And you walk into Atlantic, you see this. I remember then going up one flight of stairs or whatever, or the elevator to the other floor, that was Atlantic, and seeing the exact shot, but now with Panic at the Disco, in like literally like copying our exact sequence of where we were. And it was like, wait, what? Like, and we had done it first, and they just basically threw them in. But another funny thing, like, and they did that the exact same thing for the next record that we did, same thing, like basic, same look and this and that. They didn't do it at the same spot, but it was sort of like, so somebody, and I imagine it had to do with a little bit of the art department going, well, why this worked for them, the cool guys, let's bring in the sort of not so cool band, but bigger, and put them doing the same sort of thing. But I remember like, I had this idea for our album like look and our whole thing, and I might sort of still do it, so I won't probably say what the idea is, but I had this idea, and I found this artist to do how I wanted all our promo shots to look for this for the next record, and like this artist like quoted me like 10 grand to do this particular look that this thing that I wanted to do. And I remember calling like the art department or whoever I was supposed to talk to at Atlantic, and I'm talking to this person on the phone, and I said, look, I found this guy once who's going to do this. This is what I want to do. This is like for the whole campaign, blah, 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 blah. And the woman on the other side of the phone literally said this to me, and I thought, wow. She goes, you know what? It's too expensive for you guys, but thank you so much. It's such a good idea. We'll definitely use it for somebody else. And I'm on the other end of the phone just going like, did you really just fucking say that to me? Like, you're like, and without any sense of like the theft that you're actually doing.
Oh my God.
Like it was just like, it blew my mind, but it was like the perfect epitome of what it's like to sort of be on a record label. It was like,
wow.
And the understanding of how fucked up that is. It reminds me of a good friend of mine was asked to do now this is his side of the story, but so I don't have any of this, but there was what was the Downton Abbey? So he was asked to do like, if you want, he scores a lot of films and stuff, and TV shows, mainly English stuff, and he was asked to do Downton Abbey. So they asked him to like do like the first 2 episodes, I think, and like sort of on spec, like, here, let's see what you would do. And so he did it. He wrote all these themes and this and that. And they call him up and they say, we love so much of what you did, but we got so and so to do it. But we love what you did so much that we're going to temp in what you did for him so he could hear it and sort of vibe it, and because everybody loves it so much. And they said this to him, and he's just like, "Fuck you!
Yeah,
What do
the
you
fuck
mean?
are you talking about?
But they were so oblivious. They thought that was a compliment to him. You know, like, we're going to steal
It's
your
robbery.
Your
it's
idea,
robbery.
and because we got this other guy that's a little bit bigger than you, but I haven't heard his work on it, but like, he claims it's very sort of similar, and some of the themes are very similar and this and that. I can't verify any of it, but like, but it's that sort of thing. It's just funny how oblivious it is. But anyway,
that's why people always say, "Oh, no ideas, this and that." I'm like, no, fuck that, man. It's like, you got to gatekeep, because when you're dealing with these, snakes, it's like they're gonna do everything they can in their power to, if they see something,
yeah,
they're gonna either emulate it or just flat out copy it or take it from you. And
totally. I mean, that does happen, and I don't think it's always malicious. I think it's also stupidity, like that
yeah,
art person I was talking to. I literally don't think they even comprehended that this is the most fucked up thing you could possibly say to me.
you're like, I don't work for Atlantic. I'm not on salary with you guys. I'm not contributing. This is my separate thing.
Totally. This isn't. I'm not like. Yeah, exactly. That's 100% exactly right. Yeah, like.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, it's just one of those things where, it's been like that for, decades with the labels, and how, like you said, half of it might be malicious and targeted, and it's just flat out stupidity. It's like a complete lack of understanding of the creative process and how ideas are birthed, and that. But yeah, it's just, gosh, it sounds like you're in a good spot now, though, where you are kind of in control of, hey, you wanted to do, you wanted to compose, and have these separate relationships, and you're not relying on labels for this and that. And because that's, in my opinion, as an artist,
100%.
a lot of people say, oh, I wish I had more resources to do these ideas. But I'm like, well, at the same time, there's always a catch, right? There's always something that you're sacrificing in return for that. In this sense, if you receive money from somebody like a label, you are giving up full creative control, and any ounce of power that you had over the trajectory of your, direction or artistic approach. You are trading money for,
Well, I mean, you're not necessarily totally, like I never once, like, for instance, when like Louis XIV, when we signed our record deal, like, because I'd already had a record deal for that convoy situation, and I didn't like how it turned out, right? We didn't sign with them until they agreed that I could produce the records. You just give me money, and then I'll give you a record. So we didn't actually compromise musically whatsoever. We didn't, if anything, we didn't really have much relationship as far as that creative, because like all of our artwork, all of this stuff, we 100% control. And
that's good.
But then again, if they don't, we were at the mercy of them on what they would push and how they would push it and all this sort of stuff, and this and that. I mean, and the wonderful thing about where the music business is now is that, I now control my career 100%, like to the point where now, like, I want to take the next few months and just work on my own solo record and write songs with other people and not score any films for just a minute, because I've been so busy for a while, because I'm now, very comfortable. I'm very, I have money, I have studio, I have my house, I have, like, I'm very happy, content. I have the luxury now of being able to sort of do whatever I want. And with the advent of the digital sort of abilities to release your music to the world without the gatekeepers being involved in the same way, they're still there on whether or not this thing promotes this thing, if Spotify puts you on playlists, blah 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 blah, and getting people to go and hear you is a whole different story. But the ability to get your shit out there is there. So for now,
Right.
like I can release a record and people at least everybody can instantly go download it if they know about it, which is,
Right.
or like hear it or stream it, which I think is amazing because it takes a little bit out of the old days where it was like to get your thing in a record store was really difficult, you know.
Right.
And that was the way that they controlled the world, and now that's sort of been taken away from them. But now there's so much music, it's hard to get past all the clutter and this and that. But
Very saturated market.
definitely, but you can still get this. But as an artist, if like for me, like the thing I care most about is making the stuff, and then
Yep.
putting it out and this and that. That's a whole different ball game. So I like just sit on tons of music for years and years and years because I just constantly make music, and so. But like it becomes my goal for the last several years has been, okay, now I'm going to release music this year. I'm going to, which that is my goal for this year, is to actually start releasing a lot of this stuff. But it's great that you can do that, and
Well,
yeah, and filmmaking, being in film and stuff has afforded me, I think, a bit of the luxury of being able to sort of do whatever I want now, because it's a really, because I'm constantly asked to do score stuff, and so I financially great, and so I can now just do all the music and release music and stuff like that, not having to worry if anybody's going to
there's no
even
pressure
download
involved.
or make me any money off of it, because
Yeah,
it's
there's
definitely very hard to make money as an artist compared to like probably when I was like a kid, uh like the beef before Spotify and all of that. Like now Spotify, if you have, like a million, plays, it's like a couple $100 or something like that. So like before, back in like the 80s or the 70s or something like that, or even the 90s or something, if you had a million people that bought your record or your single, you'd be pretty set for a long fucking time.
yeah.
Like nowadays it just means absolutely nothing. And there used to be where people pretty much almost like had to buy the whole record if they wanted to like hear their song over and over again. Nowadays you can literally just go, oh, okay, what is it, let me listen to it right now. Oh, which I actually love as a
Yeah.
consumer. I love that. I love being able to just at any given time listen to whatever the fuck I want,
Yeah.
and it's there, and it's open, it is a tremendous thing. I mean, there's pluses and minuses. It's great, the discovery thing. I've discovered so much new music on Spotify that I never would have.
Spotify feeds me the best every Monday. They have that Discover playlist, and I
Sure.
find so many great artists, and
Yeah,
even artists that only have like 20-30,000 monthly listeners. It doesn't
sure.
have to. That's what I love about. I feel like you and I are similar in the sense where we want to discover music that aligns with us, and it's
Yeah,
great, and it doesn't
yeah,
have to be this grand, you know million plays thing. Like
totally.
there's
Matter of
been
fact, I would prefer it wasn't. I prefer it was
yeah,
like, and
yeah,
there's still like, uh I mean, there's still so much great music out there that's undiscovered, that's it. But yeah,
absolutely.
but I do love that aspect, because there is something really great about discovering a song that you feel like is yours. There's a really great song that I fucking love called Dolly by Nicky Hopkins. Nicky was famously a part of, he wasn't like an official member, but he did all those great piano pieces in the Stones, like Angie, and but he was on so many different sessions. Like he's the piano player on You Are So Beautiful by Joe Cocker, and just
Love
so
it.
many different. He was like the go-to guy. He was the fucking monster. He was so good, and like my favorite piano player probably of all time. And anyway, he made a solo record in the '70s, and there's a song on it called Dolly. And I remember discovering, I bought the actual vinyl years ago, just out of like when I was a kid. I used to go down to the record store and I'd go to the $10 rack or the dollar racks and buy 10 records almost every day for a good amount of time.
I
So my
love that.
record collection is immense. And I would, and the guys in the record store, they knew me, we were buddies. And so I would stick the $15 records in the dollar bins, and like it was kind of this like wink wink, hey, see you around,
I
like
love
they
it.
were cool with that. They were cool with that. So like, but I remember I bought it a long time ago, and I rediscovered this song maybe like 8 or 9 years ago. I can't remember, like 2015 or something. And I fucking love it. And even though like it was not available on YouTube or Spotify up until about a year ago. And then like recently I sort of like went and looked for it again on that stuff. It was only on, I could only find it on the one record I have. And then I remember it suddenly appeared on YouTube, but it was still only like, still to this day, I think it's only like a couple thousand people saw it. On Spotify, it only had a few thousand like listens when it ever got there. And it's also like Nicky Hopkins, like this iconic player for anybody that knows about this guy. Like, how is his record like nobody even hearing this fucking gem of a song? You should go listen. Called just Dolly, like Dolly Parton. It's like called Dolly, and it'll blow your mind. The strings on it are so fucking great. It's so good. The
piano details are great.
So great. But it was like my little secret treasure. Even still to this day, it's like my little treasure, even though like, he's this big guy, like big. I mean, he wasn't like a big artist on his own right, but he was. We know everybody knows his playing because it's on so many Brad fucking records.
I love that. Yeah, I have a Spotify playlist that I've been with Spotify since all the way back to high school, like 2015, I think is when I graduated, and I have a running playlist that I've had for about 8-9 years called The List. It's just called The List, and every time maybe 9 or 10 songs per year. I'm sure you have this similar feeling where you hear a song and like you mentioned, like it just feels like yours. It's like speaking to you, and you listen to it every day 40 times until your brain can't listen to it again. So I created this playlist called The List, and every time I come across a song like that, it goes straight to the top of the list. And so I have, for the last 8 years, I have this running list kind of almost based off of these eras that I was in and what that track was. And so it's always interesting to go back 2-3 years down that list and see like, oh, that was so cool that song was a part of that time or that era, and see these also just the whatever I was going through in that time period, what music spoke to me. Because sometimes it's very fun and bright or with this or that or cool, and then you get to this little 3 or 4 track part of the list where it's like kind of darker, and I was like, oh, I was going through some things and that was speaking to me. So it's kind of cool to see that, but it just goes to your point where you can listen to music all the time. Every day we're listening to music, it seems like, but there's always going to be those few per year where you're like, God, this really is just
this it for
this
me.
Is hitting me. This
totally.
Is
Like
me.
No, exactly. And then it'll come back on every once in a while, and you'll hear it, and it'll just be like, oh man, like
nostalgia. The nostalgia
exactly.
too, because then it brings you back to that. But yeah, music is incredible. I mean, it's the language it's the soundtrack to our life, and I think that it's incredible that we get to experience it, and like you mentioned, Spotify and streaming has given us this opportunity to have access to it all. There's pros and cons, but also, back in the day, you probably, you had to go to a record store. If you wanted to hear a song, you had to go buy this or that. So
exactly. And it's, like it's that it is for a music fan. This is probably the best time to be alive so far.
Absolutely.
Because we have it at our fingertips, like we really do. And, yes, as an artist, it becomes harder and harder to make money from that thing. Like I have friends, that are, rely so heavily on touring to make money, or whatnot.
Or merch, or
exactly, all that sort of stuff. But as far as being the ability for us all to release music and this and that, you just have to find different ways to make money. I mean, like, back in the day, like we turned down so many syncs. A sync is like when your song is played in a movie or in a commercial or this or that. And we turned down so many, like kind of stupidly, like now, because now it's like record companies build their whole campaigns just on whether or not they can get in like a shoe ad on a TV show
Right.
or this or whatever, like, you know, on a commercial or this or that. Like their whole thing is just like that, you know.
Right.
And we were like turning down so many of that stuff because we were like, we didn't want to sell out, you know, that kind of idea. Now that concept doesn't even really exist anymore, you know.
Well, and you had your, you know, moments. Even like I mentioned the being in the baseball game
Totally
earlier. You know, those are still like it's so funny. I had that video pulled up, and one of the comments on YouTube was a kid that said, "Heard this." I have it pulled up here. It said, "Heard this song on the radio a couple weeks ago. Instantly made my day." And if that wasn't enough, some guy who I'm guessing also played that game back in the day then called in to thank the DJ for playing it. 10 years later, and it's the best baseball video game and the best song on the game. So there you go. It's even though like if you're turning down the sinks and stuff like that, it's still like you have these moments where it's like people just loved that record. And
well, totally. Well, now you realize like it's just about discovery and how turning people on. So like nowadays, I would never turn down any of those sinks or something. You know, there was a certain point where I realized, wait, what do I care? You know, like I'm going to write more music. It doesn't matter to me.
You're like, fuck it.
This is stupid thinking. And from that moment on, I was just like, whatever, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's certain things we turned down, but in general, it was like, yeah, all right, whatever. I can care less. And I think that's probably a healthier way to look at it. But you know, it's interesting. But I mean, you know, music for me is just giving me so much in this world.
Yep.
And I go into ebb and flow in terms of whether or not I listen to too much music outside of making music all day long. You know, often I won't, like, to the dismay of girlfriends and stuff like that, like listen to music too often because I'm just doing I'm making it all the time, you know, or I don't want to get influenced one way or another, or more often I don't want to get inspired when I don't want to go spend the next 5 or 6 hours in the studio, you know, or like something like that. Like, so I have to do a lot to not hear music in my head to inspire me. So I won't sit there and feel that urge to go try to make something, like, you know, but I'm actually in a period now where I'm listening to music more again. You know, you have to flow with it. You really do. But I love it.
Absolutely. Well, that's good. I really appreciate you taking the time to hop on and chat. It's been amazing to, you know, learn about your, you know, musical journey, your life journey, and you know what has gotten you and led you to where you're at now. And I'm also excited for, you know, the future of Jason Hill and the music that you're going to start putting out, and in all the scores and stuff like that. But I really appreciate you taking the time. That was fun.
Absolutely. You should come by my studio sometime.
I would love to.
Record. Yeah.
I would love to. It's one of my favorite things about working in the music industry. Obviously, I'm like filming and stuff like that, but sometimes I'll put the camera down and just close my eyes and listen, because I'm in a lot of sessions and a lot of studios, and it's just it's the core of why you guys are so into what you do, is just the music. And so I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
Well, hit me up in a week or two and come on by. So anyway,
awesome.
Well, I had a pleasure, you know, doing this. So you know, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, it's so great chatting with you, and we'll chat soon. I'm going to take you up on that offer.
All right, good deal. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.